President Trump is off to Asia.
We'll be talking about trade. We'll be talking about, obviously, North Korea. We'll be enlisting the help of a lot of people and countries.
The president's best moments in the 9 months that he's been in office have come when he's been abroad.
A lot of people are disappointed in the Justice Department, including me.
The president is trying to prod Sessions into investigating Democrats.
She basically bought the DNC and she stole the election from Bernie.
You've got a full-on civil war now brewing in the Democratic Party.
Sergeant Bo Bergdahl would receive no jail time.
I think it's sad. I think it's something with something personal against this administration. I don't know what it is. I think the judge made a bad call.
The unemployment rate declined to 4.1%, the lowest in nearly 17 years.
Houston, we have a championship team, and no one can take that away from us.
It's a beautiful day. Happy Saturday.
Fox
Is it a beautiful day? I don't know. The lights aren't on yet. No, we'll find out soon.
And Kevin Jackson's in the house this morning.
I'm here, glad to be here.
And from Phoenix, right? You just moved to Phoenix.
Just moved.
Why Phoenix?
My wife said that's where we're going.
Well said. And you have 4 boys, so you probably see an excuse to get away for a few days.
One of them at home, and he's loving it. Yeah, it's a lot safer than St. Louis, you know.
True. And from October, as you said, to whatever.
To May.
It's beautiful.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal weather, doing things we've never done before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it's pretty awesome.
The summer was phenomenal, isn't it?
No,
like 120
I didn't move in the
degrees?
summer. I've only been there a couple of months.
He just got there now, so he's maximizing.
Well, good
the
luck
upside.
next summer. It's really hot, but beautiful still.
I'm not going to be there during the summer.
Well,
it's good to have you
here.
morning.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of news this morning.
Ton of stuff going on. That's right. President Trump and the First Lady paying respect to the fallen at Pearl Harbor overnight.
The stop in Hawaii comes as the president prepares to kick off his first official visit to Asia later today.
Ellison Barbara is live for us in Washington with all of those details. Good morning, Ellison.
Good morning to all of you. That's right. The president and first lady are starting what will be one of the longest trips to the region by a president in decades. The trip began with lays on the tarmac in Hawaii. The pair later paid their respects at the USS Arizona Memorial, laying a wreath to honor over 2,400 Americans who lost their lives in the attack at Pearl Harbor. Standing alongside them, the U.S. Pacific Commander, Navy Admiral Harry Harris. Pacific Command oversees military operations in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. This summer, 17 sailors lost their lives in 2 separate collisions, one near the southern coast of Japan, the other near Singapore. The commander of the 7th Fleet was ultimately relieved of his duties, and naval investigators now say as of 2 days ago that both accidents were avoidable. The president received a military briefing from Admiral Harris and a number of other top military officials in this region. Hawaii is the first stop in a 13-day trip that will include visits to 5 countries: Japan, South Korea, China, Vietnam, and the Philippines. The president says they actually added an extra day in the Philippines so that he could attend the East Asia Summit. This trip is expected to deal with trade and, of course, the growing nuclear threat on the Korean Peninsula. Abby, Pete, Kevin.
All right. It is a
Thanks,
big
Ellison.
trip ahead. Thank you so much, Ellison.
Well, and that I've never been, it's on the bucket list, but to go to Pearl Harbor at the USS Arizona, powerful imagery and you know, paying a lot of respects to those who gave so much.
Yeah, I went there. I've been there a couple times. The thing about this trip for me is I think a lot of America's looking at it. It's the first time in 8 years, and I know it's going to offend a lot of people on the left, but that a president who they believe really cares about the military men and women is visiting Pearl Harbor. I think it has significance.
No,
Absolutely.
that's a great point. I think another big moment of this trip will be when he gets to South Korea, to be just, what, 30 miles away from North Korea. He's talked a lot about building up the nuclear capabilities of South Korea, places like Japan, where he'll be today.
Right.
So there's a lot on the table here when it comes to economics, but also on security.
It has so much to do as well with China. I mean, you see President Xi securing almost Mao-like power, writing his name into the Constitution in China. I mean, the whole region is reacting to that. And he's going to Japan, to South Korea, as you mentioned, Abby, China, Vietnam, the Philippines. I mean, this is an opportunity to sort of consolidate relations relationships that are a check against a growing power in China, which we have to be concerned about.
Especially when it comes to North Korea as well. And that's when you wonder how this trip will be covered. And the only way you can get a sense of how it's going to be covered is to look at recent trips that he's taken and the other overseas trip he had right when he got into office.
It's amazing that that's how we have to think about it. It's like the president's going on a big trip. He had a big trip, as you talked about, in Saudi Arabia and Israel. He went previously to Poland, where he was very well received as well. Now he goes on this 12-day trip, and you could it's almost like you can set your calendar to how the so-called mainstream media is going to react to this.
Do you remember those days of that trip and the headlines that came out, Kevin?
I do. Pete and I were talking about it early in prep, where I believe they talked about the hand-holding incident and a few other things. But one of the other things that we touched on, I don't know if we were going to cover it in the segment, was the comment made that Donald Trump is only good when he's international. And the fact of the matter is he's good in America, but the media just doesn't cover. You know, look at all the things that are happening with unemployment and business coming back to the country, and we're talking about, oh, he's a guru when he leaves the country. No, he's not. He's a guru now.
Well, they love to play some banner headlines when he's overseas. Take a look at a few from the president's previous trip. CNN, very fake news CNN. Trump compliments Egyptian president's shoes. ABC, Pope to First Lady, what are you feeding Trump? The Washington Post, the world gets a first real look at the Trump marriage. NBC says Trump pushes. Remember when he elbowed out apparently Montenegro's prime minister at the NATO summit? And New York Daily News, why the Trump women wore veils at the Vatican.
I mean, all very important points.
Groundbreaking.
On a trip that had to do with terrorism and security and economy and a number of issues that if I remember during that trip, I went online to just get a sense of what was going on. I had to dig and dig to figure out what the substance was of that trip. And there was a lot of it. It just wasn't covered.
But contrast that with when Barack Obama went to Hawaii, I believe the first time, and it was a big deal that he ate a hamburger. You know, and I mean, and they made it as if you got to be watching this because it's so significant. So again, they certainly got a double standard.
So we're going to be paying a lot of attention to how this is covered, because a lot of significance in this trip as he travels for 12 days to a region that matters a great deal, not just on the security side, but economically as well. I mean, trade is such a big part of what this president ran on. We've got massive deficits with a lot of these countries. He's going to be working on that.
But probably one of the biggest stories yesterday, and we've talked about this on the show, was, and I would love your take, is Bo Bergdahl, who
I couldn't believe it when I got the alert on my phone.
That he's not going to be serving jail time.
I think, like most Americans, we were waiting to see what would happen, and then the alert came, the Fox News alert came on the phone that said, Bo Bergdahl walks. Bo Bergdahl will serve no additional time for deserting his post in Afghanistan.
Well, I think part of the angst of America was the fact that we traded 5 heinous criminals that are now back re-engaged, and suddenly we've got, it's like Bergdahl got away with it twice, right? We did the trade, and now he's off free. And I know a lot of the military people that were reacting are not happy about that.
Reacting, the president was one of them as well. He said the decision on Sergeant Bergdahl is a complete and total disgrace to our country and to our military. Rob O'Neill, who also is very passionate about this, was on last night and said the man who shot, of course he shot bin Laden, but here were his thoughts on Bo Bergdahl yesterday.
A lot of people were hurt, and it's all because this guy was a deserter, and it's that simple. And now, with this judge to just let him go, what about the people that were killed? What about the soldiers that were injured? What about the the wife that said she can no longer hold her husband's hand because he can't move? He's in a wheelchair. He was shot in the head trying to save Bergdahl. Think about the countless high-value individuals we stopped going after. All this war effort stopping because there's one guy left. You know, I said before that I was going to keep my mouth shut, hoping that the military judicial system would do something the right way, but I think this judge dropped the ball, and I think it's sad.
You know what I'm thinking about this morning and last night as I was going to bed are the 6 families of those that lost their lives searching for him.
You see that graphic and you just think to yourself, this is who we protect now.
And what precedent does this set for the country? If you are a deserter, what punishment are you going to get?
Of course, you see some of the people that have skated through, whether it's Bo Bergdahl, Chelsea Manning, Lois Lerner, you know, it's never any consequences. People at the VA, and you wonder why people are cynical and don't have a lot of faith in our justice system sometimes. Like, this feels like a... how can this be right?
Yeah. So, well, what do you think?
It is. Let us know.
What do you think? Let us know. friends@foxnews.com. We want to know what you think.
That's right. Well, the president also tweeting and talking about his feelings on the Department of Justice, whether or not justice is being served, and being served on both sides of the aisle, specifically talking about Democrats. Listen to what the president had to say about DOJ.
I'm really not involved with the Justice Department. I'd like to let it run itself. But honestly, they should be looking at the Democrats. They should be looking at Podesta and all of that dishonesty. They should be looking at a lot of things And a lot of people are disappointed in the Justice Department, including me.
So this sound comes alongside, a couple of weeks where, the Russia investigation is ongoing, but we learn so much more about Tony Podesta. We learn so much more about the DNC,
Fusion
the Clinton
GPS.
campaign, Fusion GPS, the Uranium One, all these aspects that are popping up on the left, and you can understand why a president in the White House would sit there and say, why aren't we taking a look at this? And he's doing it out in the open. I mean, it's a different thing to do, hey, we're going to go after political opponents in secret. He's saying, why are we not just looking at both sides?
Well, Democrats are wanting that. They're not wanting to talk about this at all because this is not good for the Democratic Party. Here's Robbie Mook, former Hillary Clinton campaign manager, on wanting to move on quickly.
I don't honestly know the specifics of it. It sounds like CNN looked into it and took action as they saw fit. But again, Anderson, I'm just not interested in these things in the past. This is why we've got to move beyond 2016. We have a governor's election less than a week away in Virginia. We've got critical midterm elections. And I can't say it enough. This tax plan the Republicans are proposing is outrageous.
Kevin, CNN looked into it, so we're good.
Well, hey, CNN's done it, so forget the DOJ and all the other, law enforcement that could possibly look into it. You got to love it. I love that Donald Trump he attacks these things head on. It isn't like he minces words, and I think that the public likes that. It's funny, the other day, you hear the left, and they're saying things like, well, it doesn't sound very presidential, and I don't like the way he tweets about these things, but that's how things get done.
It's the only way they cover it. They refuse to cover things until he tweets about it, and then they have to cover it, and the media hates that.
Yeah.
The biggest question, I think, of this whole DNC story with Donna Brazile is how, under Barack Obama, when he was the leader of that party, how they lost so much money. They were in so much debt. How did it get to that place? How did it get to such rock bottom?
Well, and the sad part about that is, Barack Obama was supposed to be a rock star. So yet here's a guy, and sadly to say, the black man leaves him with no money. And I know a lot of people are going to get offended by that, but that was the guy that was supposed to save the party.
And Hillary Clinton was supposed to win through a rigged system.
Absolutely, yeah.
So.
All right, we'll be talking about all this all morning long, but I do want to bring you some other headlines we are following closely this morning. Investigators are now questioning this man, an acquaintance of the Manhattan terror suspect. The New York Times reporting that the fellow Uzbek man called Seyfullo, a quote, pretend Muslim in his first-hour interview. The man adding he also noticed Seyfullo's temper getting worse. NYPD ramping up security ahead of tomorrow's marathon, doubling their sniper teams and using heavier weapons. Also, Twitter updating its security measures after President Trump's account was briefly shut down the other day. The social media company won't release details about the new protections, only saying it's internally investigating what happened to President Trump's Twitter. The New York Times reporting that a now former Twitter contractor disabled the president's account for 11 minutes, apparently on their last day of work. So, all right. Barely 2 months removed from Hurricane Harvey, Houston is celebrating.
Everybody to celebrate, enjoy it. Houston, we have a championship team and no one can take that away from us.
An estimated 1 million fans joining the first-time World Series champions Astros rallying downtown following a 20-block parade. But a key to the championship missing from the festivities, ace pitcher Justin
Verlander.
How do I always get that wrong?
It's a tough one.
Verlander, preparing for his wedding, of course, with model Kate Upton, who was there supporting him the whole way through.
So you win the World Series and then you marry Kate Upton. It's not having.
That's winning the World Series twice.
It's not having a bad week. Just say that. All right, we'll move on. First, Donna Brazile accused Hillary Clinton of rigging the primary. Now she says, well, never mind on that. What's the real story? We're going to ask Byron York when he's here next.
And a woman got busted for a DUI on a horse.
Is that
okay? No. Really?
You want to look at Hillary Clinton, and you want to look at the new book that was just put out by Donna Brazile, where she basically bought the DNC and she stole the election from Bernie. So that's what you ought to take a look at.
Well, that was President Trump yesterday sounding off after former DNC chairman claims to have proof the Clinton camp rigged the nomination. But now Brazile is backtracking in a new tweet. Today's lesson being quoted by Donald Trump means being misquoted by Donald Trump. Stop trolling me. Never said Hillary rigged the election.
Wow, that's a hashtag. Joining us now with his reaction, Washington Examiner correspondent and Fox News contributor, Byron, New York. So, Byron, break this down for us. She writes a book and a Politico article. I'll read a small portion of the Politico piece that she wrote. Now she denies it. This is what she wrote in Politico. This is Donna Brazile. She said, as Hillary's campaign gained momentum, she resolved the party's debt and put it on a starvation diet. It had become dependent on her campaign for survival, for which she expected to wield control of its operations. By September 7th, the day I called Bernie, I had found my proof, and it broke my heart. This included getting to choose who the communications director is, having control over hiring and firing. How can Donna Brazile walk back from these claims that she's made about Hillary Clinton?
You know, I don't think she's actually doing that. It didn't look like much of a denial to me. She's probably irritated that President Trump is having so much fun with
She's surprised, though? She wrote it.
Here's what she says. You know, in a presidential campaign, the nominee of the party takes over the party and runs the party. But that happens after the nominee is chosen. So what Donna Brazile says she found was this agreement which essentially gave Hillary Clinton control of the DNC in August of 2015. Now remember, that was before any Democrat had voted at all in the Hillary versus Bernie contest.